Hi, this is the Sankofa Pan-African series. Please support us by taking a few seconds to click on the subscription button. I, Black Pharaoh, is Emmanuale Kulu's novel, is a fast-paced Egyptian story. It is the untold story of destiny, triumph, and epic battles based on the historical rise of the Queen Pharaoh, Hatshepsut, and the expansionist warrior Pharaoh. Can you set the scene a bit so that the reader knows, what led to this war in a nutshell?
Well, what led to these wars, we're talking about the Nubians versus the Cushites, the Nubians versus the Egyptians, who were neighbors. And for years,
in this novel, in your novel.
In this novel in particular, between the Nubians and the Cushites. Okay.
Because I know that you started out the novel with Hatshepsut's husband having an affair with a Nubian slave.
Exactly.
So
yes.
I just wonder if you can bring us from that to.
Okay, so without giving the entire book away.
Without giving the book
away. So basically what happened was Tutmosis II. It's known that he had two wives. Hatshepsut was his royal queen, and or royal wife is what they called in Kemet in those days. And he also had a secondary wife named Iset, who was of Nubia, half Nubian and Egyptian.
His true love.
Yes, his true love. So Hatshepsut already kind of had a disdain for the Nubians due to his secondary wife. But just so happened there were confusion on the borders between the Egyptians and the Nubians, the breaking of treaties, past treaties in the future, where in the past where the Nubians had made with the Egyptians that they violated. So Kemet, being the dominant force that it was at that time, it caused for Hatshepsut to act. Now, at this particular time, Tutmosis II was away with his secondary wife and his son, Tutmosis III. So this forced Queen Hatshepsut to make a decision to either wait for him or fight this battle and lead the supreme forces against the Nubians.
Awesome. It is fantastic what you did with history, because historically they were neighbors, Egyptians and the Nubians, and of course there was more than one Nubian kingdom. Right. But at one point, especially after the Egyptians kind of lost the forest region around the Nile, they needed wood and other things from Nubia, and they started raiding Nubia, so that eventually, when the Hyksos, who were one of the first people to conquer Egypt, when they came and conquered the upper Egypt, Egypt looked to Nubia for help, and Nubia shunned them in retaliation. No, you've not been nice to us. I love the way you brought out all these, and then using real human beings, to kind of bring to life, things you read in hardcore history.
Yes.
So it's awesome.
And
how much research did you do?
I mean, I did 3 years worth of research. I mean, I was really interested in Amos originally, very interested in Amos and him restoring the native Egyptians back to Kemet because of the Hyksos, as you mentioned. So Hatshepsut was, if you notice when she's speaking throughout the book, she's restoring the glory of Kemet back to its original form from what Amos brought it back to, and back to what Narmer Menes started. So that was very, very important. But it took me 3 years to research. And also, I believe the Bible is one of the best historical books I believe it is the best, obviously. But that's why that had to be incorporated as well. Without giving away, there are some biblical connections of some of people's favorite characters
Characters,
mentioned
yes.
in the book in connection with Egypt and this the 18th dynasty. So of ancient Egypt, which happened to be the greatest dynasty that Egypt ever
Mhm.
had.
And then, because of I've always been passionate about history anyway, and but I keep coming across this challenge. Why do we need to live in the past? Why do we, you know? So, what lessons are there, in these historical characters that you have brought to life in your book for us who are alive today?
Mhm. Well, the lessons are we can learn from our past by some of the downfalls of some of our great African civilizations, but we also can learn to be let us romance in our glory as
Mm,
well. For for hundreds of years now, in the Americas at least, it's been force fed to us through media, through books, through television shows, through school curriculums that African people were poor, impoverished people who had no form contribution to history. And clearly, we know, according to the Greeks, that the Egyptians were very instrumental in their learning, in their science, in their mathematics, even their worship,
yeah.
even their use of speech. So that is so important to return to that. Even Europeans too, who rose to power after the 14th century, around 1492, when they started to send all these mercenaries everywhere, when they connected back to ancient Greece and ancient Rome as there to strengthen them to do what they eventually
They
did.
claimed them
Yes,
in
yes,
order to be able to kind of embolden themselves
yes,
to take
yes.
on the world.
Exactly, exactly. And that is the same thing for the African diaspora, is to connect back with Kemet, to remember the monarch of such a civilization was ancient Egypt. And actually, the first colonist civilization was actually ancient Egypt.
It is the
To
cradle of civilization
exactly.
everywhere in the world.
Uh-huh.
Thousands of years before civilization anywhere else, it
Mhm.
started in Egypt. Egypt
Yes,
gave us the foundation of everything that we have today.
exactly. So if we can realize that we're more than what's being promoted to us as an African people, as
Yes,
the diaspora. I
yes.
spent some time in Sudan and I spoke to some of the Sudanese brothers and sisters, and they mentioned to me that they knew nothing about the great Kushite kingdom. And that just it shook me so much of the miseducation that is happening back home.
Yeah,
To
yeah.
to not know how you can be in Nigeria and not be taught about Benin.
Believe it or not, it happens.
You know, it hurt me so bad because from my understanding, my father, he always studied the histories. He studied, so he was a little more advanced when it came to that. And that's something that we also need to understand is a lot of our brothers and sisters who made it over to the Western Hemisphere are the best of the best. Are the we are the best of the best because to go through the process of immigration to end up here, you already set it in your mind that you're going to be someone great. So I was raised with those things, and I was just surprised to see back home that the knowledge, understanding of who we were is very similar to what's going on over here in the Western Hemisphere. So when Black Panther came out, everyone, you're talking about African Americans, you're talking about Africans were empowered. So that inspired me to say, okay, I loved Wakanda, I love all of that stuff, but it was not a true story. I would like to tell a true African story that actually happened in history that shows our people who are still stables in history to this day.
You just answered my next question, which was going to be, there are historical novels, there are historical stories. How is this different, from other historical novels? And the very fact that you've mentioned that it is based on real characters,
Mhm,
is something that I think makes it really, really rich and
mhm,
and unique.
And it's good to bring that adventure to it, right? To bring out the adventure. That's why I wanted to write a historical fiction, to keep the core facts of it true, but to bring that fantasy, that the Egyptian mythology to it as well. The curiosity, the mystique of ancient Kemet, that they're still trying to say to this day that instead of Africans building ancient Egypt, they had to be aliens or
Yes, I know. There are people who would rather believe it was built that, but rather than
yeah.
concede that Africans did that, they'll say no, aliens must
Yeah,
have.
exactly. But there's great evidence. Even Ivan Van Sertima, he had a book that talks about the African presence in America. I mean,
Yeah.
that can explain so much. The pyramids that they felt were so similar, Kemet,
Mm.
in Africa and in Nubia as well, are in the Americas. So there was contact. I believe it was Abu Bakari the second uh,
Yes, Mali,
of Mali.
the
Yes,
Mansa of Mali.
yes. In
Yes, the
Columbus' second
sailor,
journey.
the one
In,
who, the voyager.
yes, yes, the explorer.
Yeah, the
The
explorer.
Columbus second, he wrote his second journal, and he mentioned that the people, the Native Americans of Hispaniola, told him
Yeah,
that they had golden spears from African traders.
yeah,
And he stole them, like he stole everything else. He stole them, took them to Spain, had them assayed, and found out they were from Western Mali.
yeah. And
So,
Abubakar's, the person, the Mansa who reigned after Abubakar was Mansa Musa, the famous
yes.
one who went on a pilgrimage from Mali through Cairo
Hmm.
to Mecca. But by that time, Egypt was already declined. It was under
Yes.
the rule of Persians, Arabs, and
Hmm.
all that.
Yeah.
But they were so broke. But he spent so much gold in
Hmm.
Cairo that it took Egypt 12 years to recover from the inflation caused by the amount of gold that Mansa Musa spent there. And based on that incident alone, news of Mansa Musa spread like wildfire all over Europe. And because Europe was going through such a really bad time, there was famine, there was the Black Death, plague, they were
Or
poor, there was crop failure. The monarchs, that was when the monarchs started giving explorers money to go and look for Mansa Musa's gold. In
hmm.
fact, it got us into trouble.
Yes.
In fact, a map came out that same year it's called the Catalan map, trying to
Hmm.
locate Mali,
Yes.
and that was when all of them sent their mercenaries that they now
Yeah.
call explorers to go and look
Yes.
for Africa. And that
And
was,
literally 100 years, literally 100, maybe 192 years after the reign of Mansa Musa is when they, so, what Mansa Musa did, yes, we celebrated, but he also awoken the
I know,
European
if he'd
nations.
only been a bit more prudent,
Yes.
if he had been less generous with the gold in
Yes.
Mecca and then Cairo and everywhere he stopped by.
Yes. He, the richest man probably ever to live. I mean, they say
Mm.
over 500 billion in gold that Mansa, and that's just what they estimate.
Yeah.
So, but it is also,
There are economists who say compared to even the richest people alive today,
yes,
Mansa Musa was still richer. And if
exactly,
you compared, factored in the inflation and all the dynamics of economics, he is
mhm,
still the richest man who ever lived.
exactly. And it's
And
very notable when it comes to African history.
mm,
To a lot of the stigma for African women is that African women are strong women. Well, it's very
I mean, this is one of them. By the way, we actually, it's funny how minds work. We had just recorded an episode of On Her Life as part of our African Legends. We haven't
okay.
heard it yet. When you send the novel and I'm like, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd love to do this episode on this fictional character and then
Mhm.
kind of do it side by side with the real historical figure so that people will know that you did
Exactly.
a lot of research, before putting
Yeah.
her together, this novel.
Absolutely. That's amazing. But what they always say is that African women are so strong, right? Well, if you look back in our history, African women were the first women to rule. They were the first women to be considered gods. They were the first women to be considered priests. They were the first women to be considered doctors. So these are things that, and also to be the root of the king. To not to say that ancient Egypt or a lot of other African civilizations were not misogynist, so to speak, but they had a measure, high measure of respect for the African queen. I mean, you're talking about Queen Imani Reyes, who fought off the Romans, who saved ancient Nubia from Roman power, Roman imperialism. So that in itself, you're talking about women who defended their kingdoms, who fought in wars. I love Imani Reyes' story because she lost her husband, she lost her eye and her eye in battle, and still managed to
Yeah.
keep going to keep Nubia at that time free from colonization. So it's just so many remarkable things that we can look back that empowers us to this day. The original Amazon woman, the original Wonder Woman, was the black woman.
I know. The Dahovian women warriors,
Mhm.
who kind of, when they felt that the men couldn't handle it, you know, got out and did the work that just got on with what needed to be done.
Exactly. So when you ask that question of what it does for the diaspora, to hear that, to know that, and there's an energy when an African woman walks into the building. There's an energy that comes in with this woman, a presence, and the same thing with an African man. And it's that presence of royalty that we have to reclaim.
Thank you. So, what can we expect from you in the near future?
The near future is going to be the second edition of I Black Pharaoh Rise to Power, which is going to be I Black Pharaoh: The Golden Age of Triumph, which will have 3 new chapters added to the book. We're also going to add illustrations because it's very important to see yourself in ancient Egypt. It's very important for us to see the visual of these Black Africans as the origins of ancient Kemet. So to make that connection, because if they don't see it, then they will imagine anything that they can. Somehow Black Pharaoh will turn into White Pharaoh or something like that. So we're going to release that. We're also going to do the rise of Imani Reyes, which is also going to be a part of the Black Pharaoh edition.
Yeah.
We're going to do that. We're going to go down to South Africa. We're going to talk about the great Shantaway. We're going to talk about some great, and we're going to get back to Shaka. We have to get back to Shaka
You have to.
because Shaka's story, the assassination of Shaka Zulu, was not merely by his family. It was other forces that were around the assassination of Shaka
Don't
Zulu.
give it all away. Don't
I
give it all
won't. I won't. I won't. So that story needs to be told how other people around the world knew about Shaka and you know
Awesome.
contributed.
We'll continue to look forward to your works. And so, uh, how can people get your books other than on Amazon? Are there other outlets for your books? Do you have a website? If people want to
Mhm.
reach out to you, how can people contact you?
The best way to find me is iblackpharaoh.com. Also, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook is under Emmanuale Kulu or I am underscore Kulu. But the best way is through the website. If you would like to purchase the book, we're on Indigo. We're also on Barnes and Nobles, Amazon. There's many different kinds of Amazon, Amazon UK, and Amazon CA. And also, we're also in South Africa as well. So you can just look up I Black Pharaoh, Google it, Rise to Power, and all the platforms that we're on will come up.
Awesome. Thank you very much.